Okay, we are live, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see. Question I get asked once in a while. Most recently, when I was in someone else's live stream, the question was, so when is all this going to happen? Global heating. When is all this going to happen, and when is it going to become a problem? And I'll give you the same answer I gave them. There's a short answer, which is that it's already started. And then there's a longer answer, and you need to hear both. Both answers are correct. I'll deal with the shorter version first, and of course make it complicated. It's starting now. Global heating will certainly manifest itself as excess heat in the system. It'll get hot, and they've been having record heat waves in Europe for several years now, and also it's already manifesting itself as severe weather. Global heating, heat is energy. Heat is energy, and most of the Earth's systems are driven by heat, doing one thing or another. Heat differentials in temperature and pressure cause the winds. Heating of the oceans causes accelerated evaporation, which puts more moisture in the atmosphere, which can lead to more rain someplace else. And also, heating of the oceans can change ocean currents, and heating of the oceans can create more powerful tropical storms. So if you're subject to tropical storms, they'll be more powerful. And the other thing that's been happening with excess heat in the ocean is something I think that was kind of unexpected, but it's pretty obvious if you think about it. We're getting storms spinning up, like hurricanes and typhoons, spinning up in new places. The major hurricane that hit Jamaica didn't cross the South Atlantic like hurricanes normally do. It was created just offshore of Jamaica, just out of the blue, pretty much. And then went through a pattern of double bombogenesis, which means that it intensified at a rate twice as much as what a normal hurricane would do if it's rapidly intensifying. Not all hurricanes rapidly intensify, but when they do, they undergo what's called bombogenesis. They're bomb cyclones. And the one at Jamaica was double bomb. It manifested at twice the rate of intensification as anything seen up until then. So heat can also manifest as drought. That's kind of to be expected, right? And it kind of comes along with heat waves. There's a massive existential risk drought hitting Iran right now, currently in the news as of today. They are trying to import water. Their capital city, Tehran, about 8 million people live in the core city, and then there's another 8 million that live in the surrounding metropolitan area. So about 15 million people are in danger of running out of water. And you can survive a lot of things, but you can't survive very long without water. So they're importing water, trucks, a whole bunch of other things, and people are evacuating the city. And where do they go, and how do they survive? What do they take with them? Very little, of course. That's an ongoing tragedy, human tragedy, and we have yet to see how that's going to work itself out. So the shorter answer is to the question, so when does this hit? When does global heating become a problem? The answer is now. Now, not everybody. That's not the answer for everybody. It's the answer for Jamaica. It's the answer for Iran. It's also currently, as of now, the answer for Southeast Asia. They've been getting hit with some really unhinged amounts of rain, causing flooding and mass fatality events. The Philippines has had a really bad run of typhoons, which is the Pacific side, ocean side name for hurricanes. And they had two back-to-back, like a week apart, and the second one was among the worst typhoons the Philippines islands have ever seen. My guess is that the eastern half, maybe even 2/3 of the Philippine Islands, and there's a lot of islands, some of them quite small, but taken collectively, the eastern half will become essentially uninhabitable, or at the very least, the government will have to say, you can live here if you want, but we're not going to rescue you. We can't keep rebuilding your homes. We can't keep building your grid. We can't keep rebuilding your roads and bridges and things like that. So this is all happening now. And you might say, well, the Philippines, they get typhoons. Okay, virtually all of this is attributed, everything I've just mentioned, Iran, Jamaica, Philippines, Southeast Asia, and there's a lot more. Oh, the European heat waves, all this stuff is pretty much 100% attributable to global heating, meaning the planet is heating, and as it heats, it creates conditions that exacerbate, make worse, extreme weather, and that's just how it is. Sure, you can have typhoons. Hit the Philippines or Taiwan or Japan. They just had a typhoon hit Alaska. That's unexpected, to say the least. You can have these things happen, but the nature of these storms, the rapidity with which they intensify, how often they happen, how savage they are when they make landfall, these things are all now enhanced by global heating. Again, global heating is dumping excess energy into the system, and the energy will manifest as violence. Various forms of violence. Violent heat waves, meaning heat waves that come very quickly, get really hot and last a long time. Violent storms, violent cyclones, violent wind events, including tornadoes. And currently, right now, as I speak, in the U.S. Midwest and upper Midwest and Great Plains states, they are having, actually, believe it or not, violent cold. Record-breaking cold, threat to life and property, don't be out on the roads, record-breaking in places that don't normally get this amount of cold, and so on. The way that is driven by global heating is that, I'll just run through this quickly, the excess heat is making its way to the North Pole. It's through various mechanisms, some of which are not really well understood. The excess heat is heating the polar vortex, which causes it to slow down. When the polar vortex slows down, it causes the jet stream to slow down, and the jet stream begins to meander, just like a river that slows down. This is fluid dynamics. This is well understood physics. When the jet stream begins to meander, it can't hold back cold air that normally is locked up above the Arctic Circle. And that cold air starts to break out, and it manifests in lower latitudes. So whereas normally it's up around 70 to 80 degrees north latitude, it ends up down around 40 or 30 or even 20. And these are cold air masses. They arrive very quickly. They bring high winds. They're extremely cold. They don't belong where they end up. It's not even local weather anymore. This is a collapse of the ring fence that's supposed to be holding back the Arctic air in the north. So all these things are manifestations currently. Everything I just mentioned are recent events. In fact, probably, except for the heat waves in Europe, I'd say everything I just mentioned happened in the last month. 30, 40, 50 days or so, okay? And there's a lot that I don't even have insights into because our media doesn't carry it. And if I don't happen to run across something, then I may not know about it. So there's a lot more going on than just what I've mentioned. So to the question, so when does all this start? We're in it. We're there. We're in it, we're there. And what you have to know is that this isn't like a one-time thing where your weather suddenly gets wonky or a little more violent than expected. What really happens is these are just early days, and the situation with the heating only increases. The heating never decreases. It only increases. And it may wobble around a little bit, certainly because of the seasons, but also just because of changes in the Earth system and different things that are going on, teleconnections and whatnot, and cyclical things like the ENSO and the other dipoles that drive the Earth system. But despite this sort of variation that you'll notice, the trend is up. Everything's getting worse. Everything gets hotter. And this has been going on for a while. Statistic you'll hear a lot, and we'll probably hear this for 2025 when the books finally close. They'll say something like, 2025 was among the top 3 hottest average temperatures that the Earth has seen in the historic record. So it's top 3, or it's the 3rd worst in the last 10 years. And these sorts of statistical, wordplay is hard for people to understand. But if the Earth is getting constantly hotter, then one thing you could expect is that every year is hotter than the one before. That's what it kind of means. That's saying the same thing. If the Earth is getting constantly hotter, every year it's hotter, then every year is hotter than the years before. That's saying the same thing. Now, because there's a little bit of variation in how the Earth warms from one year to the next, it may not be, in fact, hotter than the year before or even the 2 years before. It may be a little bit not as hot as, say, the same time of year 2 years before. But the year that comes after 2025, 2026, could be hotter than all those other years. So it wobbles. There's sometimes it's hotter than the year before. Sometimes it's a little cooler. But the trend is that every year is going to be somewhere on the line that's going up, hotter than the years before. And that's just how it works. I could even bring up, it's not worth doing now. Maybe I'll do it. We'll see. There's actually charts that show that the line is up. And even though one given year might be about the same or maybe a little below the year just prior, all the years are going up. So this situation doesn't get better. It only gets worse. And when you in your location, when you will feel this, is kind of complicated. And in the description I mentioned, by the way, before I forget it, this kind of content doesn't get a lot of traction with the algorithm. So if you want this sort of analysis to get out to more people, then be sure to like the video and maybe leave a comment about what you thought about the topic today. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get more of this in the future. So when this becomes a problem for you depends on where you're located. And so here's the tragic reality of this. The tragic reality is most of global heating, take a step back. Global heating is caused by unexpected and artificial enhancements to the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is natural. The Earth would be much colder without it, so we're glad to have it. But we are enhancing the greenhouse effect. And so the Earth is getting warmer. The greenhouse effect keeps the Earth from being frozen, and enhancing the greenhouse effect drives the temperature higher. And we're doing that. And the way we're doing that is we are emitting our civilization, and this has been going on for hundreds of years, is emitting CO2 into the atmosphere, where it has a really long residency time, on the order of thousands of years residency time in the atmosphere. So you change the greenhouse effect, you're stuck with those changes for 1,000 years. The way we're releasing CO2 into the atmosphere and enhancing the greenhouse effect is by burning fossil fuels. And that's pretty much it. That's the end of the story. We burn fossil fuels. One of the combustion products is CO2. The CO2 goes in the atmosphere and it stays there for a long time, and it enhances the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect naturally keeps the Earth warm, but when you enhance it, the Earth gets warmer. And that's it. The other thing we do to enhance the greenhouse effect is there's another gas that we can emit, which is called methane, or natural gas. And methane can be emitted as a byproduct of mining coal, and also as a byproduct of pumping crude oil. Often they will flare the methane gas, means burn the methane gas that comes out of oil wells, but not always. It's something they do, but they don't always do it. And also we use methane. We actually have like fracking and other things to as natural gas to make to generate electricity and other things. And sometimes pipelines have leaks in them, or even homes. Households have leaks in them, and the methane gets out of the plumbing and into the atmosphere. And methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's far more powerful than CO2. It has a shorter residency time, although the research on how long it can last in the atmosphere has been changing recently. It's maybe not as short as they thought. But even when the methane is no longer in the atmosphere, what happens is that it converts to CO2. So even if it's removed from the atmosphere, it just converts to the other greenhouse gas, which is CO2. So this situation never gets better. We are creating this situation, and we're not going to stop creating this situation because we can't stop. We cannot stop. That's a double negative. We cannot stop. We must continue to burn fossil fuels for daily survival. That's it. That's your answer. Without coal, oil, and natural gas, most humans would die. There you go. We are now 8,000 million humans. For the vast expanse of human history, we were maybe 200 million humans. And of course, we were even fewer than that further back you go. But in the modern written record, like the Greeks, the Romans, since the times of the Greeks, and maybe a little bit further back, we were maybe 150, 200 million. We are now 8,000 million. That's at least 40x, 40 times more than what this planet sustained without fossil fuels. And how you get from 200 million to 8,000 million, that's fossil fuels. That's it. That's what did it. You can't do it without that. And so if you ever stop burning fossil fuels because you're worried about the greenhouse effect and you're worried about global heating and maybe some other things, if you ever stop burning fossil fuels, then your population of your planet drops from 8,000 million to 200 million. If you're lucky, it might even go lower than that. We could really take a hit here, folks. And even 200 million is about 3% of the current population. So that's bad. We could have a 97% die-off if we just went back to pre-fossil fuel era numbers of people that were literally supported on solar power. And I don't mean solar panels. I mean the light of the sun, which puts the fruits on the trees and the nuts on the trees and the grapes on the vines and the grass in the pasture, and the cattle eat the grass and we eat the cattle and we eat the sheep and the sheep give us wool. That economy, that whole thing, that's solar powered. The actual light of the sun. And the sun, rises in the morning in the east and it sets in the west in the evening, and then you're done with the sun. That's it. That's all you got. Whatever you could do between sunrise and sunset, that's what you do. Yeah, whatever your animals can eat that grew in the sunshine between morning and evening, that's what they get. That's what they get. And whatever rain falls because of evaporation, that's what you get. And whatever the temperatures were, that's what you get. Because you have nothing else. You just have solar power. The sun, the actual sun itself. The light of the sun, the heat of the sun. And the natural greenhouse effect, which we are impacting by increasing it. So how does this affect every single person? Well, like I said, it depends. It depends on a couple of things. Some parts of the world are going to be impacted sooner than others. We're beginning to see how that's playing out. Europe has been getting monstrous heat waves, so that can be expected to continue. We haven't seen monstrous heat waves like that in the U.S. We've had some, but not like they've been having. We have been getting increases in hurricane activity. They don't get our hurricanes. We do get hurricanes. The AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, the AMOC, is probably shutting down. Well, it is shutting down. I don't know when it's going to shut down and stop, but it is in the process of weakening, and therefore it's going to go away. But even just a weakening of the AMOC, which is happening right now, it has begun, it's measurable, will impact Europe. Again, probably more so than the US, but it remains to be seen. It's going to affect the Atlantic basin. So that's what? North America, Europe, parts of Africa, the Caribbean islands, right? So that's all in the AMOC. And it even goes further south, the Indian Ocean, South Atlantic, Antarctica. So these things, hold on a second. So these things will be regional impacts, and not everybody will even feel the same impact, just because of regional differences. Also, affecting you personally will be how much money does your country have? For example, how much do you have a strong, robust insurance industry? Because let's face it, if global heating comes along and dumps a bunch of hail on you, because that's one of the things it can do. Hail is the result of a lot of moisture in the atmosphere and a lot of convection, both of which are driven by heat. So you can have a massive hailstorm. Let's say the hailstorm is huge, big hail chunks, and it destroys the roof of your house. Oh, and by the way, it destroys your car, completely destroys all the horizontal surfaces, right? The trunk, the hood, knocks all the glass out of the windows and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, if you have insurance, and if your insurance industry in your country is robust and not going bankrupt, well, then you can get these things fixed. You can fix your roof. Oh, and in the meantime, while your roof has big holes knocked in it, you have money enough, or maybe your country has money enough to help you get temporary housing somewhere, maybe even in a hotel, while your roof is being fixed by the insurance company. So depending on how much money your country has, and how much money your insurance industry has, and how much money you have, you will be less affected by a disaster like that. If you currently live in Florida, say on the western side of Florida, which is where the Gulf of Mexico is, and you've been flooded out by storm surge associated with hurricanes once or twice, you probably have enough money. You could leave Florida. You could leave that part of Florida. Maybe you rebuild your house. You put it up on stilts. If there's money enough, you can do that. Or if you don't like it, you can just leave Florida. Go to another part of the same state, or just go to another state altogether. And countries with money and with wealthy people and with a healthy insurance industry and with help from the state, maybe subsidies to help people relocate or rebuild or whatever they have to do for this circumstance. If you live in that kind of country, then you're less affected. It doesn't mean your house wasn't destroyed. It doesn't mean your car wasn't totaled by a hailstorm. It doesn't mean your neighborhood wasn't turned upside down by a tornado. It just means that in terms of effects on you, the actual effect might be less than for somebody who doesn't have any resources. So what's your situation? And how is global heating and all of its knock-on effects going to affect you for your situation? Also, it depends not just on how much money your country has to back you up, or your insurance industry has to indemnify you and recover you, but how much money do you have personally? Because if your country decides not to support you, maybe you have enough money that you can just escape this. Maybe there's a hurricane coming in. You've noticed it. It's been on the weather. So you just get in your private jet and fly to some other country, some other part of the same continent or the same island. You just get out of the way. And so you personally are not affected. Maybe your house is destroyed, but maybe you've got insurance. Maybe you don't care about your house. You only care about yourself. And you weren't even in the storm. You weren't in the hail. You weren't in the tornado because you left. So if you have a lot of money, you won't be affected. That's the point I'm trying to make. You personally. You won't have to sit through the hurricane. You can get on your private jet or your private vehicle. You can buy a ticket on a commercial jet and you can just leave. And then maybe you read about it in the news and you come back to your community a week later and your house has been destroyed, but you personally weren't there. You just weren't there. So this is what determines how you are affected. And the story here, if you want to see it for what it is that the wealthy, whether wealthy individuals, wealthy communities, which can get more resources anytime they need them, just because they influence politics, wealthy countries supported by wealthy industries like the insurance industries, if they're doing well financially, okay? If there's a lot of money in your scenario, either you personally, your region, your country, or your insurance industries or other industries like healthcare that can support you during a crisis, then you will probably be less affected by global heating. Now, it doesn't mean that's going to save you from a hailstorm that knocks holes in your roof. It's just that it's not the end of your world. You see the difference? Whereas if you live in a poor country, or you're a poor person, or you don't even have insurance, and maybe the insurance industry has left your region completely because they knew that the hail was going to come and knock a hole in everyone's roof. So they didn't want to be around when that happened. So they pulled the policies, waved goodbye, and left. So if you're in that situation where you couldn't afford insurance, they weren't in your region, you don't have any money, you can't fix your roof, you can't fix your car, you can't buy a new car, you can't get in an airplane and escape, you have nowhere to escape to, no one wants you, then you are immediately affected by this. And you could have two people living in two homes right next to each other, and both of the homes get a hailstorm that knocks holes in the ceiling. Big hail, big storm, lots of damage, knock a hole in the ceilings. One person doesn't have a lot of money, and they had to sit through it. They were terrified, and now they have a hole in the top of their house, and they can't fix it, and they don't know who's going to fix it, and they're in trouble, and they can't live in the home anymore. Whereas the other neighbor just flew away and came back and hired somebody to fix their roof with their own money. Or maybe they've got political pull. They're so wealthy that they've got politicians in their back pocket. So they just make a phone call and say, hey, my community is in big trouble. And by the way, I in particular, and don't you remember me, I'm a big donor. So all of a sudden, they get all the help they need, and the person next door doesn't get any. That's just how it is, because that's what money does. That's why people have money. And that's why they want more money all the time, because you can influence outcomes. So when does global heating start to affect you? There you go. I don't know. The impacts of global heating are already manifest in the environment. I could come on here pretty much every day with another thing. Like right now, there's a massive cold front dropping down from the Arctic Circle that's going to freeze about 2/3 of the eastern portion of the United States of America. Huge thing coming down, lots of red flags, going to be fatalities, there's going to be property losses, there's going to be losses to businesses, massive shutdowns, freeways are going to be closed, whole cities will probably be under snow, take them days to dig out, and that's real. That's a real impact, and that's because of global heating. How can they have 12 feet of snow if there's global heating? Well, because it breaks down the jet stream. This is well understood. This is predictable now. That the jet stream, the northern jet stream, which is tied to the polar vortex, which is weakening, these trends are going to continue. And these cold air masses are going to come down from the north into the lower 48 states. Of course, they cross Canada, but nobody cares what happens in Canada. Even the Canadians probably don't care. A lot of these storms, they're not storms, these cold air masses are coming down through central Canada, where there's just the big boreal forest, and most of the people in Canada actually miss it, unless they're like on the eastern side. Then they probably catch a little bit of it, like around the Great Lakes. They're catching a little bit of it. But it's definitely coming down into the lower 48, even as far as Florida in some cases. So this is a big deal. And there will be heat waves again in Europe next summer, and Iran is running out of water. And what are they going to do? Who even knows? That's an ongoing story. We're going to hear about that in the months to come, how they manage that, if they do, if they can. We don't even know. We've really never had this happen before. A large, wealthy country with 50 million citizens, 15 million of which are in the capital city, and the capital city, not some podunk place out in the boonies. The capital city is running out of water, and you can't survive more than a few days without water. So Well, how's that supposed to work out? That's happening right now. The real story here is not who gets to go first. We kind of know who gets to go first. Jamaica, Iran, Europe for the heat, the U.S. Central states for the cold. And so we're starting to see the pattern now of what's happening. The bigger question is what happens to everybody as this gets worse? Because it has to get worse. It can't get any better. The only way that things get better in the U.S. Midwest states is if the North Pole runs out of cold. So that there is no cold to break through the jet stream and head south and freeze everybody. If the North Pole runs out of cold, which it could do, it's actually happening. The North Pole is warming. Well, first it was 4 times faster, and maybe now it's even 8 times faster. And the rates of change are also changing. So 4x was what it was a decade ago, and now it's 8x, and soon it will be 12x, right? That's the trend. So the North Pole is warming faster than everywhere else. It's called polar amplification. There's an actual word for it. And as it warms faster, the polar vortex becomes even weaker still. And as it weakens, the jet stream begins to meander even more. And then there's even more cold air that escapes from the north and comes down into the lower latitudes all around the world, but certainly here in the U.S. But eventually that cold air may simply run out. It may heat so much in the north that what comes down is not cold air anymore. And that's an absolute disaster. And that's if the polar regions warm that much, and here we're just talking about the North Pole. There's also a South Pole, but there's nobody down there, so we don't care. Supposedly, we don't care. But if things continue on the track they're taking in the north, it could completely destabilize weather patterns for the entire planet. All of it. Completely destabilize everything. And then who knows what's going to happen? You may get more rain some places or no rain at all. You may get high winds in some places or no wind at all. You may get high rainfall events or possibly in the same location, no rainfall at all. Or it may rain like a son of a gun for 5 years continuously. And people are sick of it and they're destroying homes and villages and towns and everything else and bridges and dams. And then it stops raining for 5 years. And then you have droughts. This could easily happen because the Earth system is coming completely unhinged. And if this were to be happening in the middle of the Gobi Desert or the Sahara Desert or the untracked interior of the Arabian Peninsula, then nobody would know. Nobody would care. Even if it was happening in the Amazon or even the northern boreal forest, no one would know. Nobody would probably care. I mean, scientists might care, but no humans would care. But that's not what's happening. These changes are taking place and becoming worse, and they're increasing in their trajectories and in their impacts. These changes are happening where people are. We build our cities and our civilizations where people could be. We did not build them in the middle of deserts. We did not build them in the middle of heavy boreal forests or the tundra or above the Arctic Circle. We did not build the places where humans can be in the middle of the sea, even though that's 2/3 of the planet. We just didn't do it. And so when these impacts start to happen where people are, that's a big problem because that is inescapable, you see, because there's nowhere to escape to. We are a global civilization. We are, what's that number again? 8,000 million humans. If we were only 200 million humans, like we used to be, then there would probably be places we could run to and start over. But there are not, because we are currently 8,000 million people. And even if 8,000 million people decided, I can't stay here, I can't stay in Tehran, in Iran, I have to go somewhere. Well, the place they go is going to have people. Because every place that can have people now has people. There are no places left where people can go where there are no people. Elon Musk is trying to get to Mars. Okay, good luck with that. And pretty soon, if he does go to Mars, there'll be people on Mars. And will they want refugees showing up on Mars because they're trying to escape global heating? No, They won't. So you can get to, if you're the first to get to Mars, you can have Mars. If you're the second and third person to get to Mars, then you're having to contend with the occupants, right? They're already there. They don't want you there. Sounds weird, but that's how it is. And it's going to be that way all over the planet. These people have nowhere to go that isn't someone else's place. Because we are now 8,000 million humans, not 200 million humans. 8,000 million humans. Am I saying this clearly enough? This planet is full of people. Everybody is where they need to be. Where they are is where people can be. They're not in deserts. They're not in boreal forests. They're not out on the ocean. They are in the places where people can be. And when these places come under the impact of global heating, whether it's increased rain or increased heat or decreased heat or increased cold or decreased cold or ice melt or extra freezing or flooding or droughts or whatever it is, whatever happens to these people in the places where they are, there's nowhere else for them to go. Unless you're really wealthy. So if you're listening to this video and you're really wealthy, then okay, maybe you should start planning where you're going to go when global heating comes for you. If you're already having impacts from global heating, you may want to start thinking now about getting out, because this only gets worse. And as it gets worse chaotically. We can't even plan for this. They didn't know 20 years ago that the jet stream was going to fall apart. They didn't know that. There was no theory they could point to or any evidence that that was going to happen. It happened suddenly, and somebody noticed, and they pointed it out, and then people started looking at it, and they're like, oops, yep, this is really a thing. Took them by surprise, and that's how this story goes. That's the story now. This is falling apart faster than we can even anticipate it falling apart. This Earth system is going places that we can't anticipate. Except that it will, with absolute certainty, get hotter. Because that's all it can do at this point, is get hotter. Now, we can stop burning fossil fuels, but that won't make any difference. Because it won't cool. Once the CO2 is in the atmosphere, and to some extent, even the methane, once it's in the atmosphere, it stays there. It's called the residency time. It has a long residency time. And it takes certainly hundreds, if not thousands, or even millions of years to remove a lot of CO2 from the atmosphere. So that's where it stays. And when it's there, it heats the planet. Because that's what happens. That's physics. When the planet gets hot, it's hotter. Because that's what that means. Global heating means the whole planet gets hotter, and then it's hotter. And what does the heat do? Lots of things. It melts ice. It heats the oceans. The oceans spin up the hurricanes and the typhoons. It evaporates water from the oceans and creates bands of moisture that can then fall out of the atmosphere as precipitation. Fancy word for rain, hail, sleet, ice, snow, right? All those are precipitation. And the more atmospheric moisture you have, the more precipitation you can have. That's why you can have 12 feet of snow. Oh, we've always had snow. Yeah, well, you're going to have 20 feet, and then you're going to have 25, and then you're going to be buried in snow. You'll be buried in snow for so long that when they finally dig you out, you'll be a popsicle. You'll be dead. You'll be a corpse. A corpsicle. How's that sound? A corpsicle. How can you have 25 feet of snow when it's global heating? I just finished explaining that. Cold air that can now escape the Arctic because the jet stream, forming a ring fence to keep the cold air where it is supposed to be, breaks apart. I can't do that anymore. And so the cold air comes down. And why is the jet stream slowing down and meandering and breaking apart? Because of global heating. In particular, polar amplification, which is real. Everything I just said is real. This is all measurable. This is science. We're doing science now. This isn't even hypothetical. This isn't even a model. This is what we call instrumental. It's measuring. We're just measuring it now. Yeah, we try to predict things. Good for us. Yeah, golf clap. But we don't have to do that. You just go outside and see what's happening to you. Stick your head out. Look around once in a while. That's your reality. That's now. So when is this supposed to hit? When is global heating going to become a problem? Well, like 4 years ago, with increasing severity with every passing year. And so maybe the question is, what's the top end? How bad could it get? As bad as it needs to. Hothouse Earth, where the most of the Earth becomes uninhabitable for human purposes. Oh, well, and actually, if it gets hot enough, it melts all the ice fields that we can point to, Greenland and the Antarctic in particular. And Greenland alone has something like 19 or 21 feet of sea level rise. Just a significant meltdown of Greenland will give you 20 feet of sea level rise. And that's a lot. That's the end of civilization. And in fact, if you look at coastal facilities and cities that have extended right down to the edge of the sea, where your most expensive real estate is, and low-lying areas like Florida, like the southern third of Florida is barely above sea level. If you just look around, Bangladesh is mostly just barely above sea level. The Netherlands, right, is by definition mostly below sea level. They're fighting the sea all the time. London would probably flood pretty quick. They have their really fancy tide gate, but it's not going to be very hard to overwhelm that. Plus, it's supposed to be a temporary measure. When the gates go up, they can't stay up for long because the Thames is building up behind them. And if you put up gates and you flood the Thames River, then you're back where you started. Really, it's just supposed to be a short-term fix. But if you have super high tides, king tides, and flood tides all the time because of ice melt, global heating, then your gates are just useless. They can't do what they're supposed to do anymore. Oh, make them bigger. You can't make them bigger than London. If you make them higher than London, then you're going to flood London. Engineering. This is just basic engineering. The gates are meant to be a temporary solution to a temporary problem. When your problem becomes permanent, then your temporary solution is not a solution anymore, and they won't even close the gates against the tide. It doesn't even make any sense. So, where do you live, and how much slack do you have in the systems? If you get enough ice melt, the entire U.S. interior floods. That's the Mississippi Valley and the Ohio Valley. The entire interior floods. So from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Appalachian Mountains would become an inland sea. That's it. It would become an inland sea. Oh, the interior of California would be flooded. California would be a series of islands. The Coast Range, the Sierra Nevadas, Transverse Range in the south. Be a series of islands. Be an archipelago like the Philippines. Just a bunch of islands, kind of clustered together. You'd kind of still be able to see California there if you knew what the mountain ranges are, but the central part would be completely flooded. The south would be completely flooded, and probably parts of Oregon and Washington would be completely flooded if you get enough ice melt. And that's the end of the world. But way ahead of all that, even just 2 or 3 feet of sea level rise, ends civilization as we know it. The refugee crises alone would end civilization. Just people being deflected from where they live and having to go someplace else under duress, like the south of Florida. Having to go, or all the South Pacific Islands, all the low-lying areas around India, including Bangladesh, and probably Pakistan, plus all the ice melt coming off of the Himalayan mountains, flooding all the communities. Pakistan got flooded just recently from ice melt. And it's just, the refugee crises alone from these events, just from ice melt and sea level rise, destroy civilization. A long time before all the ice melts and buries huge parts of the continents in seawater. By the time we have enough sea level rise to put major parts of the United States underwater, humanity's gone. We won't be there to watch it. We'll just be scattered bands of survivors living on what used to be mountain ranges. Now they're islands, and we'll be islanders, and small groups of people, villages, tribes of maybe 10,000, villages of maybe 500, and scattered through islands, and they communicate like Polynesians do or did on boats, dugout canoes, trimarans, small sailing craft, and they sail between the islands, and they don't even remember us. They don't remember any of this. It's all just a myth to them. That's what you get with hothouse Earth. So how does that affect you? How does that affect anybody? Do we even care? It's so far in the future. It may not be as far in the future as you think. And besides which, unless it's actually 1,000 years in the future, then some of this is for you and me. Some of this is going to happen to us. We're going to get this. We're going to get the early days. And it's going to hurt. And it's going to be a mess. And it's going to destroy people's lives. And that's a problem. I mean, it should be. Maybe it won't be. Maybe the elites won't care. Maybe the governments won't care. Maybe the governments will say, okay, well, these are the states and the counties and the regions we have to abandon, so we'll just do that. And if you live in these areas, maybe they encourage you to leave. Or maybe they don't allow you to leave because they don't want you to spark a refugee crisis. You have to stay where you are. Tough it out. They could do that. Oh, declare martial law, put the military in different places, put up huge fences. Right now, the U.S. is trying to keep people from coming in from Mexico, and they put up big fences and barbed wire and all these big metal fences. And, well, California might do that to keep people from the east coming to the west. No, we don't want you here. No. We're doing okay. What have you got? You got anything? Got nothing? You got any money? No. Okay, well, no, we don't need you here. You stay where you are. That'd be brutal. The European countries could do the same thing. We're closing our borders. You're from the Netherlands? Yeah, you're kind of screwed. Where are you going to go? Maybe the UK will take you. Oh, they're not taking people because they only make 40% of their own food, and they can't even get other countries to export food to them. So their population is starving, and they can't take any refugees. Okay, fine. There you go. There's your reality. Oh, what? The AMOC shut down, and so now there's all kinds of problems with the food supply because the climate has changed, and now you can't grow things that you used to be able to grow, and that's a problem because you got nothing to eat because you can't find crops that will grow in this new environment caused by global heating. Oh, that's too bad. Tough it out. Oh, you're gonna have a big die-off? Oh, okay. Enjoy, because you're not coming to our country, and no one's going to your country because your country is dying, whoever you are. Iceland, the UK, Germany, France, Netherlands, Denmark, who knows who you are. But the AMOC shut down, and now you can't grow food, and you can't feed yourself, and you want to come here, and you can't, because we have the same problem. So la-di-da. Now that's where this is headed. So where are you going to be when all that happens? I don't know. What's your story going to be? As the earth becomes increasingly uninhabitable, where are you? How much money do you have? How rich is your country? How far away can you run before you have to present a visa? What's your story? Well, then that's how soon and to what extent all of this is going to affect you. And that's your story. You know that better than I do. For my part, I'm going to tough it out here. I think I've got decent opportunities to survive this. My house is at 82 feet of sea level. Okay. It's pretty good. That's a lot of ice melt before I start having to swim. I'll take it. We don't get big storms here. We don't get hurricanes at all, or tornadoes. We don't get hail. We just don't have the convective energy. We might someday. That's a possibility. We might even get a hurricane at some point. Well, yeah, maybe. West Coast hurricane? Sure, why not? Could happen. West Coast tornadoes? Maybe. Doubt it. Big snowstorms, hailstorms? Doubt it. Doesn't seem like we're the place for that, but could happen. Right now, it doesn't look like it will, so I'm not too worried. What's your situation? Where are you? How soon is this going to hit you? Now you have to watch out. You have to keep your eyes open. As they say in the nautical terms, your weather eye. Keep your weather eye open. You're going to have to pay attention. And you have to evaluate yourself financially. Can you get out? Well, if you can get out, where are you going to go? Do you have family? Do you have some other place that speaks your language that will let you in? Do you need a visa for that place? Then get a visa. Be sure that you can make a move. because you may have to do that, because global heating is coming for all of us, and it will come for some of us sooner than others. And are you one of those people? I don't know. You're going to have to assess that. I'm going to have to assess that. I'm doing that all the time. So that's what I got. We can stop there. Other topics to come as I think of things, and as per my usual admonition, don't die. That's your challenge. Don't die.